The solution to too many mosquitoes is more mosquitoes. Who's with me? Brilliant. Said no one. You know you got to the wrong hotel when the most comforting sound you hear is someone removing your door with power tools. Thank you for subscribing to the show today at Bud Ford Comedy. I met Garth Brooks in the early 90s. I saw him again in the early 2000s. And the shocking part wasn't that he remembered my name. It's that he trusted me to drive his truck. That's weird, right? Who does that? We'll talk more about it in a few minutes. Google just said, you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to get permission to release 32 million mosquitoes. I know what you're thinking. You're like, Bud, bro, you read that wrong. It's probably like 32,000. Or maybe it's 32. Or maybe it's a bad Google Calendar invite, but clearly you're wrong. I'm not. 32 million mosquitoes. That's what they want to do. Google. Now, before you panic, I want you to understand this. This is where we got to dial the back a little bit. Google is saying, hey, man, these are all male mosquitoes. They're sterile, and they won't bite. The intended plan is they're going to fly around and they're going to hook up with these female mosquitoes, and then they're going to mate, and they're eventually going to wipe out the mosquito population. Okay, hold on. So the entire plan depends on female mosquitoes making questionable dating choices. Have these scientists ever met women? Because experience tells me they have standards. You don't just release a bunch of unemployed, sterile dudes into Gen Pop and expect women to go, you know what? Where do I sign up for that? Yes. No. The female mosquitoes are going to be like, bzz, 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 bzz. And you know what all that means? It means, girl, he's hot, but he ain't making babies hot. No, you don't need him. He's the wrong guy. Now you're going to get to the club. All these other mosquitoes, there are going to be two lines of them. These mosquitoes over here, all of a sudden, they're getting more confident because they have things like jobs and futures, and they're fertile, you know, important to mosquitoes and whatnot. Meanwhile, on the other side of the club, music going, what do you got? Bunch of mosquitoes over here. They're the Google ones. Now, they're dressed a little different because they're in the Patagonia vests explaining blockchains to the chicks. They'll get a few, but it won't be that many. If you ask me, the project sounds like 4 scientists invented the whole thing and they had never downloaded Tinder. So what I'm telling you is Google is betting $2 billion on one assumption, that female mosquitoes are willing to settle. History suggests otherwise. This is going to fail. They're reassuring as always. Don't worry, they're perfectly safe. Have you fools never seen a disaster movie? Of course that's what you're supposed to say. That's what y'all always say. Dudes in khakis and them long white coats talking about everything's under control. Next thing I know, president's on, people are in a room, and it starts with, out of an abundance of caution. Yeah. Y'all sent off the tones on the radio. I didn't have a choice, but hear this. There ain't no caution. We have problems. Google has spent 25 years trying to get me to make the proper selection in my search engine choice. Now you're going to tell me that they're going to re-engineer wildlife? We skipped some steps. You know, Gmail's still not right. It still suggests that I should buy socks because I like toasters. What? Tell you what we do. Let's slow it down, dial it back. Y'all fix Gmail, and then we'll talk about releasing, biblical plagues. Maybe that comes next in the line of evolution. Who knows? We'll talk about it. Just don't jump to things yet. Next thing you know, California's going to look like a scene from the Alfred Hitchcock's Bugs movie, sequel. Maybe. People in the streets, they're running, they're waving pool noodles. It is catastrophe. Nobody wants this. Local news helicopters disappearing and humming clouds. Man, no. One Google engineer talking about, I need to update my resume. Yeah, I bet. Now, I could be wrong. You know, sometimes I overthink things. But don't bug me. Be all in my business when your Ring alert camera goes off and there's just, I don't know, 11 million rejected male mosquitoes outside. Mad and want to talk because they got friend zoned. It's your problem, it ain't mine. I told you. My name's Bud Ford. I got my start in all this when I was a young kid. I worked in radio for most of my adult life and then nationally syndicated mornings and then on the television as a meteorologist. And then I got old and I'm bald. And all those things kind of worked against me. No, really, I retired from radio because the business model is no longer the same. It's no longer sound, rather. The TV business model's in the same boat. So I still get the chance to do weather as a meteorologist. I don't get to play with country music anymore, but I do get to talk about some stories every once in a while when something relevant comes up. And I think it's interesting, as I was back in Tulsa just the other day, every time I go back to Tulsa, because I did country radio there as the Bud and Broadway show, every time I'm back in Tulsa, back home I like to call it, there's always somebody going, I was there when they discovered Garth Brooks. Everybody, not just the waitress, the mall manager, everyone was part of the discovery team for Garth Brooks. Some dude pumping gas, looking around the corner. Hey, bud, how you been, man? I'm good. You know, I was there. I was there for Garth. I was there when they did the whole thing. Yeah, good to see you, pal. Hop in the truck. So was half the state of Oklahoma, bro. Okay, so I saw where... I'm kidding. I saw where Garth was about to sell his catalog, which has become fashionable. I don't know if you saw the price on it, though. The guesstimation is somewhere around $2 billion. $2 billion. Friends in low places done become friends in private equity, haven't they, Garth? Kidding me. That's a lot of money. Man once said in an interview, and he knows if I'm lying, I'm dying. Said, I have more money than my grandkids could ever spend. It's not about the money. Let me tell you what, $2 billion is going to go a long way for your grandkids. We could, like grandkids add 10 to the 10th power. That's going to be a lot of cheese. And don't think Trisha doesn't still have some too. I mean, she's got a lot going on. The catalog's not going to be worth near that, but still, she got a lot going on. I got to watch that whole thing start from the radio side. Not the ground side like what happened in Stillwater and the surrounding in Oklahoma, but from the radio side. And after he got his deal going, I've talked about this before, my man was still playing those county fairs, the little bars, the festivals, because they had already booked this man. Sometimes he was pulling in $3,000 or $4,000 on the event, or it was worse. It was a radio event, and he wasn't getting squat else, no money. And I'm telling you, he handled it. He handled it well. There are some of today's performers will amaze you if I started telling you stories about how they don't handle the you're working for free years very well. Garth put up with that. He handled it with class. He handled every one of those commitments, and he didn't back down from them. Taylor Swift was the same way. There's a line there. There's a commonality in that they both sold so many records. He goes from working in people's backyards or the fairgrounds, whatever you call it, to selling out arenas, like I said, faster than Taylor Swift tickets. And it's funny, too, because I was talking to my girl the other day, and we were talking about Garth, and she's a few years younger than me, but we were talking about the explosion that was Garth, and I asked her, who was Garth before Garth got here in the country music business? And if you ask most people that, the answer is they'll have no idea. The answer is Hank Williams Jr. Nobody wants to jump up into that, but the man was a 6-time Entertainer of the Year. Look that up. It'll depend 5 on 1 and 6 on... My point is, that's what Garth did. Same stuff. Hank Jr. come from a lineage. It was a little different thing then, but still, he captured the world. Still famous enough to keep that Monday night theme going forever until, you know, he popped off at the mouth or whatever, said what he did. For whatever reason, time expired on it. But still, Hank Jr.'s a cool dude, too. Garth's one of the nicest people you're ever going to meet. In the early 90s, I met him in Columbia, South Carolina. I was working for WEZL, I believe, back then. It was probably 93, 92, something like that. I could be off a year or 3. Either way, introduce myself. Hi, how you doing? Move on about my business, whatever. We talk for 10 seconds and we go on. It was cool, but he wasn't Garth like you think of Garth. He was the opening act, and he was making 3,000-4,000 if he was lucky. I'm in the country music business. Everything keeps going. He blows up, right? It's kind of a big deal after a while. The next time I see the man, he's like, "Hey, bud, how you doing, man? Hadn't seen you in a minute." Who has that kind of memory? Garth meets so many people in a week, but that's incredible. That's his thing, right? He does that. So later on, I'm in Oklahoma, and we are working at a radio station there. It was the Twister is what it was called. It was the Bud and Broadway show on the Twister. And Garth was going to do some national recording for a bunch of stations. He was doing it live, and he needed a place that was set up to do that. The studio building that I worked in Tulsa was there's plenty of room, and it had a fencing around to protect Garth. Now, protect might be generous. It was basically decorative confidence, but whatever. Garth was cool about it. He was unbelievable. Worked in our building for a few weeks when all that was going on. And he was the kind of guy where you're like, "Hey, Garth, your truck's parked where they got to move the trash can or whatever. Can you move it?" He chunks the keys and he goes, "Here, move it wherever you need to, man. No problem." Who does that with that kind of money? "Hey, get security." None of that. Just here. Go move it, bro. That's amazing. That's Oklahoma. That's really cool. And not to mention, it was like a Chevy 2500 and probably a 20, I don't know, it's 15, 20 years old at the time. It was old. My point is, he could have had anything he wanted. My man could have had a custom Range Rover truck built if that's what he wanted. He didn't. Drove an old Chevrolet. My man, if you talk to Garth, you meet Garth, he'll remember you in this odd way. People talk about Garth a lot. They talk about, was it the singing? Was it his voice, his hat? Was it the concerts? And those were amazing. I think his superpower was probably marketing, much like Buck Owens in that respect. Not just talented, but brilliant at understanding people, reading the room, knowing what to say and when to say it. Being motivated by doing something that furthers the conversation versus just repeats the same lines that someone else did, maybe a little differently. My man reinvented what we were doing at the time. He would stay after every show. A lot of people do this, shake every hand, making eye contact, remembering your name. That part nobody's doing. I've worked with some people months and months at the time. They're not going to remember your name in the country music business. I'm like, "Bro, you need me," but no, they're not going to remember you at all, which is nuts. Doesn't make any sense to me. That's kind of what the business you're in, right? This dude with all of that wasn't just building audiences. My man was building evangelists. And another thing that people don't necessarily think about when you think about Garth. Garth was not the greatest songwriter of this age. He don't write much. What he did, much like Conway Twitty, was found incredible songs. Then he fostered relationships with those writers. Then he took care of their product, i.e. the songs, introduced them to the planet, and then re-released them in repackaged forms so that the writers could continue to make money on the product. You know this. Greatest hits, box sets, live albums, special editions. If he come back in with a different color shirt and a new hat on, we were about to get a box set of some sort. The man invented recycling. Garth Dang Brooks, potentially selling his entire catalog for $2 billion. Saw where Justin Bieber sold his just the other day for $200 million. That's a lot of cheese. Garth needs 10 times that. Of course he does. Garth's songs sound more like your uncle is giving life advice over coffee. Bieber's sort of sounds like he just discovered feelings, right? Titles: Garth, The Dance, The River, Unanswered Prayers. Justin Bieber, I was like, baby, baby. Like, that's the title. Okay. I'm not hating, I'm just saying, you see the difference, right? Probably the difference between being born and raised in Oklahoma and growing up where your hair has its own publicist. Garth's first truck had rust. Bieber's first haircut had representation. See? One of them grew up baling hay, the other one grew up making teenage girls scream. Now, I guess to be fair, Garth did the same thing. He just did it in a stadium. That's different. $2 billion is a crazy amount of money. I totally agree with that. This dude spent his entire life and continues to do so, trying to make people feel like they personally know him. And I would say, based on that alone, $2 billion's probably a good bargain. He's a good dude. He's genuine. He's wonderful. If anyone tells you different, well, they had different experiences with him. I didn't have that. I love Trisha, too. Trisha's one of the most wonderful people on the planet. What a great couple. Now, speaking of Tulsa, I was just talking about that. I got back from Tulsa the other day. I went and stayed at a place in Bixby, Oklahoma, and it was fantastic. It was clean. It was quiet. It was comfortable. And that's when I realized, you know, clean hotels, the good ones, they don't get enough credit, because I've stayed in the other ones where I wasn't sure really if I was checking in or if I was being processed. You don't know. Just don't know. One time I checked into a hotel. They didn't have a room for whatever reason. They put me in a pet room. Don't hate on me. I like dogs. But this room smelled like every Labrador in North America just got done doing CrossFit. It stunk. The smell was so strong it didn't just permeate my nose. It got down into my lungular tissues. It caused remodeling down there. I ain't been right since. Started barking in my sleep. Comforter was so disgusting, like it still had stuff on it. It was white, but it wasn't really. So I threw it in the corner and I put the couch over on top of it to try to calm that smell down. Certainly wasn't going to touch it with my body. Now, I don't know how you travel with hotels, but when I do have to go stay in one now, I carry a sleeping bag with me. I put that on top of the bed. Not that comforter, because ain't nobody washed that probably since a couple of presidents ago. So no, that's going to go in the corner somewhere, and I bring my sleeping bag. Now, this particular hotel, I'll never forget. It was so bad, I got back to the house, I threw the sleeping bag in the trash and hoped at least that the hotel would apologize to REI and me. Because it ain't fair. You shouldn't just get one sleeping out of a sleeping bag. They're not disposable. That's the thing with hotels, though, right? They're a gamble. Sometimes you get fluffy pillows, and sometimes you get decorative asbestos. You get something. Sometimes it may go home with you. And don't get me started on key cards, because that just makes me mad. Key cards I don't understand. Every hotel's been doing it for decades. How come we still suck at it? Well, it just happened. I did. Try it slower. I did. Try it faster. I did. Lift the handle. Oh, I did. At this point, I'm out in front of my door doing all these dancing tricks, looking like a fool. The people behind me are looking out the window going, what is that moron doing? And then they see the card and they're like, oh, same thing we did. A buddy of mine and his boss were overseas. Now, they were doing some work for the company that I worked for, and they were staying at this hotel, and it was kind of bougie, actually. So they went out working with clients, and they might have enjoyed one too many adult beverages. And by one too many, I mean 8 too many, but whatever. They got back to the hotel, no problem, went to their room, and as you know, like we do every time, the cards don't work. No problem, we just go downstairs, talk to them at the front desk. They'll understand. Drunk as Cooter Brown, different country, language issue, no worries. Eventually, maintenance shows up. They can't unlock it neither. So what are we going to do? Their suggestion was just go down this other room. Imagine how you would feel. You're in another country. Everything that you own, including your passport, is on the other side of that wall. You have a wallet, just a few things, a phone, that's it. But your charger's in that room too. And they're telling you, no, just leave it all. Come back tomorrow. It'll be here just fine. No. So my friends wound up sitting in the hallway watching this dude take the door off the hinges, put a hole saw in it. He attacked that door with power tools, made Home Depot the solution. You realize real quick you ain't on vacation when all that's going on, right? You're like on Property Brothers Emergency Edition. You don't want to be in that show. I've stayed in enough hotels to know this. When the room is clean, the shower's hot, the key card works. Nothing has to be cut open with a reciprocating saw. You know, the basic stuff. I'm not asking for much. I'm not really complaining about thread count. I brought my own sleeping bag. Tell you what I'm doing, I'm counting my blessings. So after staying in Tulsa for a week in a hotel, I just want to say publicly thank you to the Hampton in Bixby for doing a really good job. Because after some of the places I've stayed in, walking in to a clean hotel feels more like checking into heaven. I've never been to heaven, but I've lived in Oklahoma. Oklahoma, not Arizona. What does it matter? Come on with a 3-dog night now, right? Come on, you give me a little bit for that? No? High five? No? Yeah, all right, cool. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for being a part at Bud Ford Comedy. I went a long way for that joke. Feel like it may have went too far. Hope you have a great day.